steps that we're configuring. So we're just starting the configuration of our virtual machine, and that is we're on this. In last class, we were actually doing the configuration of Hyper-V. Let's go to the dashboard. If everyone's on this page, let's go to the dashboard. Those who are not here, whenever you're there, let me know so I can just tell you where to go. So add roles and features, the first thing. Let's click that, everyone. And then you're on the first page here before you begin. So let's click next here, nothing here. And role-based or feature-based installation. So next here as well. Okay, and then this is your first name, Win01 and IP. So next here as well. And what we're selecting here is Hyper-V. So because we put the code there, no. You're not there, or is there an error? For take a screenshot of that, and you can just save the screenshot. And if you're not able to upload today, it's okay. That screenshot should just help me know that what's going on. So if we click the Hyper-V and add features. So if nobody got an error here, but yes, it may happen to some that if the code is not really being accepted there, majority it is working fine. So I'll just give you extended time whenever you can finish before the next class. That would be okay as well. Okay, so let's click next here, guys, and nothing in the features. And let's click next some more. So this is just an introduction to that, right? So not much here. Next. And that's where we wanted to know what's going on. And we have one Ethernet NIC here, and that needs to be connected to the hypervisor. So what it is asking on this page is, that's what I wanted to draw here, and we'll put it in the quiz as well. Maybe I'll just show you the diagram and you can just explain me what's going on here. So right now we have just one, suppose this is Ethernet 0, right? So this Ethernet 0 here is the physical NIC. Obviously that's how the computer sends its data inbound, outbound. But now we're installing Hyper-V here. So that Hyper-V needs to have access to outside world as well, outside network as well. So for that, it needs to connect to the network card. So Hyper-V is asking that I'm creating an external virtual, it calls it external network, or in the documentation you will find it as external virtual switch. So it is creating external virtual switch now. It's about to create that. And it's saying, hey, can you connect me to some physical NIC here? Now Microsoft says that when you're configuring that in the production environment, suppose it's Dell server, HP server, so you should have, first of all, on that physical server, bare metal server, you should have 4, 8, 10 network cards, because there's going to be a lot of machines there that's going to be sending data and receiving data through those network cards. So you will be creating NIC teaming there. Ever anyone has created NIC team before? Ever heard of it before? Heard of it but not created? Created? No. Okay. So NIC team's benefit is?
Either double speed or redundancy.
Okay, so NIC team offers for network cards LBFO, right? Not LCBO, LBFO. So what is NIC team? It offers for network cards LBFO. Anyone knows what is the abbreviation of that? Load balancing failover. So this is the same for when you configure failover clustering in Windows. This is the same for when you configure fault tolerance in VMware, or Hyper-V replica in Hyper-V there. So NIC team for network cards, either you will be actually doing both load balancing, and if one fails, the other network card will be acting as the active network card, or the passive will become active. So NIC team offers LBFO or load balancing failover. Remember that. Now what stage we are in and what is doing? Exactly right. So okay, so here external virtual switch here. that external virtual switch needs to connect to some network card. So it's asking that, hey, if you click that network card, I'll be using that from now on. So why external virtual switch needs to use that? Because later when we create virtual machines inside now, so these virtual machines here, suppose, now these virtual machines have their own virtual NICs here, right? So those virtual NICs need to connect to something, right? So they need to communicate with each other. They need to communicate with the outside world, the external network and the internet. So what they will be doing once we create those virtual machines inside Hyper-V, they will have to also connect, okay, wrong one. They will also have to connect to this external switch. So inside Hyper-V, these virtual machines through their virtual network cards will be connecting to the Hyper-V's external virtual switch. In turn, the external virtual switch is connected to the physical NIC, and this is just one NIC we created normally, and obviously you will be creating in production environment a NIC team here, and there will be a TNIC which is the boss NIC here, and normally in production environment you connect that external switch to the boss NIC, we can say, but TNIC also, there's another term for that, that network card that actually controls all the other network cards within the NIC team. That's how we put it there, but here we're just going for one network card. But you understand that when we click the Ethernet 0, it's going to connect to an external virtual switch that is about to be created by default with the help of Hyper-V hypervisor, and later it's going to make those communications possible for the virtual machines with each other and to the outside world, right? So that's what we're exactly doing here. If we go back to that page here, so you can see there's one network card here, and let's click that network card. Best practice is that you must have one network card in each Hyper-V that is available for RDP connection or remote desktop connection, right? And the second, third, fourth, fifth network card can be connected to the virtual switch, but we're just connecting the first network card, and it also works fine. So this is the logic of why we're here. We could have just clicked and next, but you should know the background picture, the big picture, that you have to connect the first virtual switch to a physical NIC, because after that it's going to let all the virtual machines inside communicate with each other and to the outside world through this Ethernet 0 physical network card, right? So if you understand that, and any question is welcome here, so well, let's go ahead and click next. So everyone, this page, virtual machine manager or migration, virtual machine migration. Now there are two authentication protocols there that we can select. In interview also they ask that if you want to enable live migration, so should we go for CredSSP or should we go for Kerberos? So in that case, we should know first of all that if we don't click this option, allow the server to send and receive live migrations of virtual machines. If we don't click that option, obviously we can click it later as well. But what is CredSSP and what is Kerberos here? So if I just simply or briefly explain that now, because later we're going to do that lab, and we're going to try to live migrate, and we're going to try to make one machine active, one passive, and do some synchronous replication there within the LAN. So for now, what we need to know is CredSSP is if you connect to a machine directly. If I go back to the diagram here, you are connected directly to this hypervisor and you're initiating a live migration. So CredSSP is used for that. So if I just put that here in the diagram, CredSSP is used when the admin is sitting in front or is logging locally to a Hyper-V to initiate live migration. What does that mean? Normally in production environment, the data centers are secure. You're not just going to walk into a data center, oh, I want to do this, oh, I want to do that. You need permission from the boss. Even if you're the top admin there, you need permission. If it's a break fix, that's another thing, that the server went down and you need to run and fix that. In that case, you don't need approval. Otherwise, you always need approval to get to data center where you are going to be responsible for the virtual physical servers and virtual machines. So that's why CredSSP is not good, or it's not going to be used a lot in production environments. Why? Because you are given a laptop and remotely you will always connect and initiate a live migration, right? or desktop or laptop you will be given as a system admin. So CRUD SSP is if you have a physical machine in front of you, and then you log in locally, and then you initiate live migration. So then what is Kerberos? Kerberos is the opposite of that, which is if we remotely RDP into, we understand RDP, right? Remote desktop protocol. So if we remotely RDP into the Hyper-V and initiate a live migration, right? Then we use Kerberos. So we need to configure that later, where we can easily test this lab with CRUD SSP, but better go for Kerberos because that's what we're going to use in your production environment. In the interview also, if they ask that, hey, what are you going to use there for authentication when you are about to migrate a virtual machine? So you need to say that, yeah, I'm going to be using Kerberos because I'm going to remotely connect from my laptop to a Hyper-V to initiate a migration, right? So that's the difference between the two authentication systems here. I've just given it briefly. I'll just upload that slide with lots of information when I ask that in the you know, quiz. Then you should have some more material to just answer that quiz. Okay, so CRUD SSP, Kerberos, there are two types. If I go back to that page here, so these two are not selected. We're not selecting it right now, but we will be selecting everything later. We can just come back to that later once Hyper-V is installed. So, but we understand that, okay, if we enable that, then we can initiate a live migration from this Hyper-V. So let's click next here. And this is the local path. Normally in production environments, you have the path of SAN here, storage area network. This is local path here. Obviously, we don't have SAN here or storage area network. Normally, a solution of SAN would require $50,000, $20,000, $80,000, $100,000, or even $1 million, right? So SAN solutions are really, really expensive. So, but there, here also, we can just go for a small company setup, because if you have a virtual machine in a local physical disk, then it's not a very ideal situation. So if I go back to a diagram here, you have two types of networks. In production environment, you will have a SAN network, right? So if you have a hypervisor here, two hypervisors here, right? And these two hypervisors have local physical disks. So these are local disks here. Now those local disks, and I'm just gonna grab a SAN picture here as well. So HP SAN, maybe some of you have had some experience with the SAN or have seen that before. Normally colleges don't have that for experimentation. So SAN is just a lot of disks that are available over the network for you, right? So suppose I grab that diagram. These are all the disks there. So suppose you have a SAN here. Now that could be a $20,000 solution, or 30 or 40 or whatever. So HP, Dell, they all have SAN. NetApp is a very famous SAN solution as well for virtualization. So what happens is that suppose the boss says, hey, we need 200 disks in a physical server. So is it possible to have 200 disks in a physical server? Have you ever seen that or heard anywhere on the internet that this HP server, Dell server has 200 disks locally available, or 300 disks? So you can have, one of my students in another college was saying that, okay, we have a HP server that has 60 disks, but there are trays that come out and you just put the disks. There's 60 disks he has seen, but 200, no way, right? So you must have then a very big physical server there. So, but you can have 300 disks as well if you have SAN there, and you can just map those disks. These are called LUNs, or logical unit numbers, and through that you can map the disks to each hypervisor. Suppose you have 200 hypervisors. We have just, or I'm just creating two hypervisors, right? Suppose you have 200 hypervisors. So these disks, shared disks or LUNs, are attached to each hypervisor. And why would we want to do that? Why are the LUNs, or these are called shared disks, attached to each hypervisor? Anyone knows that what is the first main benefit of not using local disks but using shared disks for virtual machines? Okay, how? Suppose.
Info is written
Okay, so suppose you create a virtual machine here, and this virtual machine, its virtual disk right now is created in the local physical disk on top of a local physical disk. And there is another virtual machine. That virtual machine's virtual disk is actually created on LANs or the shared disk. So which one is better off? Obviously, as you said, that the one that is created on LANs or shared disks, that is better off. Because if the hypervisor crashes here, so the virtual machine whose virtual disk is on a local physical disk, that will be disconnected as well, right? While if this virtual machine's virtual disk is on LAN, so first of all, that LAN is just a shared disk. Actually, the virtual machine's virtual disk is living here on the SAN. So that's why you really spend a lot of time, a lot of money actually on installing the SAN solution, right? So that's why, first of all, we have right now, we do not have SAN, but we're using the local disks here. But there's always, obviously, that's not the best practice here. But since we don't have SAN, so that's why we're going for that. Second thing is when you initiate a live migration. So the virtual machine goes from one physical server, Hyper-V, to another, and that virtual disk does not have to move, right? The virtual disk does not have to move. So that's the other benefit there for the physical server. So now, since I lost you all, so let's go for lab and let's grab those marks. Woohoo! Yes, exactly. Who cares about theory? Okay, so let's go ahead. So, so let's go ahead. Now it depends on if you really want to go for this and you want to understand. Okay, guys. So let's get going, and there's that local disk on which you have all this virtual machines will be created on this local path here, and that local path is on server 2. So let's click next, and let's click restart here because Hyper-V will be installed after the restart as well, right? Hyper-V will be installed after the restart as well. Oh, this monitor. Okay. Now I can see. Okay.
Now I can see.
And you can see this third monitor for you. Oh, that's better, right? Okay. Okay, guys, so let's click. Did we click install already? No one clicked install? I love you guys. Okay, so take your first screenshot here. Did you click install?
Yes.
Einstein rule, right? I know click, you know click. Okay.
He wasn't here for the first day at all.
Oh, he doesn't know the Einstein rule. Okay. We created that rule on day 1, so you were not there at that time, right? Oh, you were there and you still clicked. Okay. Okay, guys, go ahead and click install. Then, if you create a screenshot, it's okay, but that would be an extra one.
Take a screenshot of this?
No. But if you created that, it's okay. I mean, like that would be 11 screenshots from you, and I would know that okay, you guys are more careful. So that would just add to. If there was some wrong screenshot, I'll just think of this one and not cut the marks. Okay, so this screenshot. So yeah, I know click, you know click is the rule here, and that's because I just need these screenshots, so I would know you did that lab, completed that lab, and then I could just mark you for that. So these are easy marks that you can just grab right away, right? The challenge will be the quiz. Even that will be open book. Although still very challenging. So what you understand here would really help. Otherwise, good luck. So this screenshot, those who took it, very good. They would serve as, suppose you were missing somewhere else, so I'll just count that. Those who didn't take it, so 2 guys didn't take it. So guys, next time, next screenshot, if I no click, you know click, it's as simple as it is. So, or maybe I could just grammatically say, if I do not click, you do not click, right? Okay, so let's log in there, and Hyper-V will still continue. Oh, okay. Yep, it's not gonna.
All those disk-based guys.
Yeah. Oh, you have a lot of other courses with virtual machines there, right? I guess. Mm-hmm.
Oh, there it goes. It's restarting now.
Oh, the NASA. Yeah. You got the fastest machine, I guess.
No.
i5 32 GB. You said i5 32 GB, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Still slow.
It's still slow.
It's probably only got a 5400 RPM.
That
I don't
hard
have,
disk.
I don't have an SSD. I have an Optane.
Oh, yeah. That is a big factor as well. I have a hybrid SSD plus HD. So it's cheaper. So it's going to do this after Hyper-V is installed. It's just going to continue with the rest of the installation. I'm just afraid that as I add more features and more applications, there will be cries coming from students. Oh, now we cannot go ahead. And that's where I'll have to. I don't know what to do. I mean, we need to really go for better software. Hmm? So it's going on, right?
It's going up.
Okay, so guys, at the end, you'll be just uploading. Do not email me. I got a lot of emails. I'm very happy about that. But please upload. There's an upload link there, right? So
Just try to type in my computer password.
well, that screenshot didn't count, kind of thing. But it's the first screenshot. You can just name it first screenshot. I'll just count it as those who took it. It's okay. Those who didn't, for them.
Is the root making the hard drive?
I was making her. I made her cry so bad.
He was like sitting on the ground, just curled up.
Yeah.
All I can get out is a no.
Hey guys, so who is still not done?
75 to 90.
Right, two people are not done. Not done means still not. Oh, it's not working. Okay, maybe after the class we can troubleshoot. So, but take a screenshot of that and let me know that I was not doing that. Email me about that. So then try to just redo. Guys, I've sent the link of the videos on Gmail. Everyone got it or? Right. So I added your. I created a Google group with your Gmails, right? And I sent there the link for the videos. So step by step, everything you can follow from there. And then if there are errors, because errors will come, but I can just give you extra time to just follow the video. It's exactly step by step. You cannot miss anything from the video, obviously. So if you have access to that, so it's in the Gmail in the Google group. But I'll put it on OneNote and also I'll just try to put it on other videos. So first of all, okay, you just take a screenshot of that. With the reasons and oh, just a screenshot. I'll try to guess. Do try to explain as well. Yes, sir. You good? Oh, you good, right? So you got. So guys, do check your Gmail and check that link. And if you don't have it and need it, just let me know. Email me, text me. I'll just send you that again. Try to have those labs ready. And if you're falling behind, just try to do that. Mm-hmm. Okay. Did you fill the form? Oh, okay. So, hey guys, here we have. I have put that link for you to grab those. Okay, here. Yeah. So on week 2 and week 1 as well. In week 1, if you go to 007 here, please check that you have. I have just put the link there to fill out those. Just give me your Gmail and your college email, so I could just add you to Google. I think it's on 05 there. That's where I've been putting that link. So on 05 in the lecture, this is the forms link, week 2 and week 1. So just go to that Google form and just put your college email and the Gmail, and I'll just grab your Gmail and put it in the Google group so we can communicate as well, right? So please fill out that form. It's on week 2 and week 1 both for 005, the lecture class. I don't know why they created 2 links here. So in the lecture class, there's a form. Hopefully you've filled that up, so I could just create a Google group for you, right? Let's go ahead, guys. That class YouTube link is there. Just fill up the form and you will get it. Otherwise, communicate as well that I'm falling behind. Can you just give me that video? And it's all step by step. And just let me know that you're falling behind, so I'll just accommodate, right? So, okay, guys, let's try to go ahead. Oh, well, I was still asking that, are we all on this page? Anyone not on this page other than those who are having issues? Okay, everyone's on this page, right? Yeah. Okay. And if you do get an error, please first take a screenshot and then email with explanation. And don't worry, then I understand that errors will come, right? Okay, so if you are on this page, so Hyper-V is done installation, and yeah, it's recording. So let's click close button here. And once you click the close button, then you see here that on the left side, Hyper-V is loaded. What we can do is, other than the infrastructure role, so either you go to tools and click the Hyper-V manager, or you can click here and then Hyper-V is showing here. Now that's your officially first screenshot, right? So Hyper-V installed is the name. So first screenshot is this, where on the left side you click that and it's clearly now showing that your machine name and the IP you've given there, that just shows that Hyper-V was successfully installed. So that's your first screenshot. Take that screenshot. The name is Hyper-V installed. So this is the first screenshot here. I'm just gonna put it on OneNote as well. No, I'm putting week 3. Day 04, week 2. And the screenshot name is screenshot 1 and okay, so Hyper-V installed. Okay, so let's go ahead, guys, and the screenshot 1 is Hyper-V installed, and this is a screenshot here. If you've taken that, then let's right click on this written here, your first name and the IP, and there's a Hyper-V manager. Now this is the same that you can access from tools, and Hyper-V manager will be written there from here or there. It's the same thing. So let's click that Hyper-V manager and see inside and look inside. So this is a hypervisor that is type 2 hypervisor, which means that it is installed on top of an operating system, right? So this is not the ideal environment. Obviously the hypervisor has to be installed on a empty hardware or a bare metal machine. Now if you're inside the hypervisor Hyper-V manager, then let's click that your first name Win01, and then we can right click here and you can see all the options of hypervisor. First option is new, and then there's virtual machine, hard disk, which is virtual hard disk, and floppy disk, virtual floppy disk. So it's like you can mount a utility here, and then you can just put it to the virtual machine or attach it to the virtual machine, and it will just grab that software from there. So but virtual disk, virtual machine, and then there's import export virtual machine. We're going to do that too, how to export a virtual machine from your virtualized environment and then import it back again, how to do that, and what kind of questions that is asked there. Then there's Hyper-V settings, which is the overall setting of this hypervisor here. If you can configure and know the nick and corners of one hypervisor, suppose you have 200 of these, so obviously you can just know and troubleshoot the options of all 200 as well. But for that, then you need a centralized application called SCVMM. So Hyper-V settings, let's click that Hyper-V settings here. And once you click that Hyper-V settings, now this is for this hypervisor that you have to you can just change anytime. Suppose the company had invested after some time, after 6 months or 1 year, you kept on saying, hey, we need SAN there, come on, it's virtualized environment, you want me to have redundancy introduced for your environment, your machines are going down again and again. So finally the company invested on NetApp and they got the SAN there, storage area network. So then you can come here and change the path from local C drive to that SAN, which is whichever path that it normally has. You can just put that path there for the SAN, right? So but here it's just virtual disk. But understand one thing, because later we're going to be installing VMware ESXi as well, and then we're going to be doing some comparison as well, that the best hypervisor in the market is VMware ESXi. This is the second best. Then you will be able to compare. So in here, virtual hard disks of a virtual machine are placed in a separate path. Virtual machine files like the brain of the machine, VMX files, and all the configuration files, they are placed on the separate path here. In VMware, their virtual machine hard disk and virtual machine files are on the same folder. In Hyper-V, Microsoft Hyper-V, they are on separate folders. So try to remember that, but this is something good to know. Then there's physical GPUs here. Anyone knows what's a GPU? Okay, so it's used for cryptocurrency, it's used for gaming, it's used for all Autodesk, AutoCAD, Photoshop. So if the physical suppose it's a HP server, Dell server, and it has a GPU, obviously it will detect it here. Right now it doesn't have, so it doesn't detect it. So NUMA spanning here, and NUMA spanning is that the virtual machine will get direct access to the CPU, the processor, and the memory. So virtual machine that needs a lot of performance, very good performance, then NUMA spanning is there for exactly that purpose. If I go to the diagram here, so if the virtual machine, suppose it has a SQL server or Exchange server. So SQL server is for databases. Was there a SQL server course in your program?
Yeah.
There was.
Like half of
Oh,
the
okay.
introduction.
There's 2 classes for SQL.
Okay, were you able to install SQL Server, Microsoft SQL Server, or any?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
SMSS.
Oh, okay. So, okay, so, but it was Microsoft SQL Server Express Edition? Maybe you don't remember that, right? Express. Okay. Okay. But that's good. At least you know how to install SQL and have some introduction. Other colleges, they have no idea about SQL unless it's in the course full SQL. Okay, so that's very good. Okay, SQL Server, it's really a messy application. It really consumes a lot of memory and CPU. So if that kind of machine is there, suppose it's a file server here, suppose it's a web server here, and hundreds of users in a big company are connected to that. So that NUMA spanning will give whichever machine you want. It will try to give some direct access to CPU and RAM for that. So if that option is selected, but then it will be less available for other machines if NUMA spanning is selected there. So, but it's supposed to be still selected that any machine needs all of a sudden during peak hours more CPU and RAM, then NUMA spanning will be the option that will allow it to grab more of that memory as required. Now there's that live migration here, and in live migration, that's where we're going to come when we have two hypervisors installed. Hopefully we can have a strategy for that to install two hypervisors. So I could just give that as an assignment because you guys have your laptops and you can just click at, and before the next class install a second hypervisor with 2 GB RAM maybe or 4 GB RAM, right? So, but if we have two hypervisors, then we can at least see all the configurations of a live migration or just a basic migration. How do we do that from one hypervisor to another? And you will be then, and those steps you really need to have for production environments, for companies, for interviews, obviously for the test here as well. But it's more like you're presentable in the actual company interview, or when you're doing the contracts. Okay, anyway, live migrations, so we're not configuring that now, but this option is here. We understand that Hyper-V settings. And then there's storage migration. So storage is the virtual disk of a virtual machine. You don't want to transfer a virtual machine. So if I go to the diagram here, so you can see here that if you want to, so I'll just go for the second diagram here. If you just want the virtual machine to be loaded on the RAM, normally what happens is virtual machine files are either on a local physical disk or on a shared physical disk that is called LUNs, logical unit number, right? So if this virtual machine is powered on, it powers on the RAM. You need a RAM for that, right? So the more RAM is there, more virtual machines can power on. But what you're saying is that in storage migration, that I want to migrate the virtual disk of that virtual machine from one shared physical disk to another shared physical disk. That is called storage migration, right? But if you want the virtual machine to migrate, this means the best criteria is don't migrate the virtual disk. Migrate only the virtual machine from the RAM of first Hyper-V to the RAM of the second Hyper-V. That is called virtual machine migration. But the virtual disk stays there, right? So this means that hundreds of users are connected here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They are just opening their file and closing. All of a sudden, this whole physical server is really slow. And there are so many tickets coming your way, so you decide, oh, I need to, hey boss, I need to just do a live migration right now. So what happens here is you can just migrate the memory contents of the virtual machine, which takes milliseconds or 1 or 2 seconds. And your virtual disk will not move because it is on a LUN or a shared disk that is attached to this hypervisor as well as it is attached to this hypervisor. So when virtual machine moves and virtual disk does not move, that is the biggest benefit of SAN, that the virtual machine will move right away and users will have no downtime, and users will their virtual machine will be on top of a very fast hypervisor or the host. So that's why SAN is there. But the main thing is storage migration is that you want to move the virtual disk. That takes maybe all night. Suppose it's a 200 GB disk. So over the network, on LAN, when you're migrating the disk, it can take a huge amount of time, most probably all night. So storage migration is virtual disk from one physical LAN to another physical LAN, or one physical disk here to another physical disk here. What we will try to do is, when we do live migration or just a migration, since we don't have SAN there, storage area network, so we're going to migrate from the local physical disk of one hypervisor to the local physical disk of another hypervisor. We can do that with operating system based virtual machine or an empty virtual machine. We can do the same, because migration steps are same whether you have an operating system or you don't have an operating system, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and try to check out what we were talking about here. So there's the storage migration. This is just virtual machines. Virtual disk moves, but the virtual machine stays on one server. Then enhanced session mode and replication configuration. So in enhanced session mode just means that if you have a virtual disk in one machine, that virtual disk will be available or redirected to another machine as well. It will be made available if the machine was first on this server. Now the virtual machine moved to this server, so the virtual disk will be redirected to the other server as well, right? If we go back here, so there is that replication configuration, very, very important redundant feature here. Replication configuration just means that if you have, that's it. No. So if you have one virtual machine here and you have another virtual machine here, so the first virtual machine will be the active machine and the other virtual machine will be the passive machine, and there will be replication going on. Which replication? It is called synchronous replication. So synchronous replication, right? So this kind of replication, the passive machine updates itself every second. As soon as the update happens, the passive machine keeps on updating whatever's happening on the active machine, right? And that active machine, if the whole server goes down, what happens? Passive becomes active. So that is going to be performed or configured in that replication where what we're seeing here. Okay, so replication configuration is that you have one active, one passive machine, and then there's that user keyboard, mouse release, enhanced session mode, reset checkbox. So this is all the configuration of a Hyper-V, typical Hyper-V here. So if you can click on the top here, virtual disk, and go for your second screenshot, which is that Hyper-V settings, and it's showing your name here actually on the left side. It's showing your name on the left side, right? Yeah. So the second screenshot is Hyper-V settings. The name of the second screenshot is Hyper-V settings.
Yeah, you killed it.
It's a step in the right direction.
It really is good for you.
Yeah. Did you click the first?
Yeah, dude. I'm just gonna draw a rectangle. It is a second. Is everyone for the over 2? 11 screenshots in another 50 minutes.
Stay after the class. We'll fix it.
Got you guys. Yes.
Oh, I'm sure that it would be over.
Sure.
So guys, those who are having issues with the laptops, you can stay after the class and outside somewhere. We can just fix those issues, right? I'll just be with you. Way to go. Amazing.
What is the screenshot called?
It is Hyper-V settings. Screenshot name is Hyper-V settings. Huh? Very good, very good. Okay, guys, let's go ahead. So what we try to understand here is that there is a virtual, so this is just Hyper-V settings here. We get that. Let's go ahead and if you've taken a screenshot number 2 here, then we can just move ahead and close this option. We don't need to make any changes now here. So let's just close that. Now what we see here is that we can create one virtual machine and try to understand the wizard and what are the features that are provided for those virtual machines. So this virtual machine, if we try to put an operating system inside this virtual machine, so first of all, if you're on the Hyper-V here, if you've closed that option or the extra window, when we can just right click on your first name Vin01 within the Hyper-V manager here, and you can see new, and then you see this. So if everyone's on this page, let's click virtual machine. Now, because of our laptops having very less hardware, and this is not just here, it's pretty much in every college, other colleges as well, Humber, George Brown. So, but the thing is that we don't have to install an operating system inside. If you want to do that at home, what we're going to do here, you can just follow the same steps and install operating system. It's going to just take forever to install an operating system, but after that you can have a better live migration scenarios there. Okay, anyway, so if you click the virtual machine here and click next, so there's that virtual machine name that is asking. So we can just put here your first name VM01. Now, if we had SAN connection, we could have just gone to store the virtual machine in a different location and selected the SAN connection. For that, the SAN connection has to be made to the physical HP server, and those network cards are called HBA cards. So here, if you have put in that your first name VM01, then let's click next. Just put the name, click next, right? And then there is generation 1 and generation 2 machines here. So generation 1 machine is for backward compatibility. Now hypervisor was properly introduced in Windows Server 2008. So Windows Server 2008 is it was supporting 32-bit virtual machines and applications and 64-bit virtual machines and applications, right? So generation 1 is for Windows Server 2008 based virtual machines. So some information that you really need to know for the exam, for the quiz, and for the industry, for the market as well, is that so Windows Server 2008 based Hyper-V used to support, or actually many companies still have that. So suppose they hire you, oh, you're a virtualization expert, and you put in a resume that you know Hyper-V and VMware ESXi as well. So they will say that, hey, can you just migrate our virtual machine from Windows Server 2008 based Hyper-V to Windows 2012 or 2016 or 2019 based Hyper-V. So you need to know for backward compatibility that Windows Server 2008 based Hyper-V used to support it's 32-bit OS and applications, as well as 64-bit. So it was a mixture, right? So while the Windows Server 2000, so Server 2012, 2016, and 2019 are all supporting 64-bit applications and OSs, right? So that's one difference. And second difference is that when we go for Windows 2008 based Hyper-V, so the virtual disk of the 2008 based virtual machines extension was .vhd. So this is the virtual disk extension I'm talking about. Virtual disk extension was, and you need to understand that for today's cloud environment as well, because if you decide to go for Azure, Microsoft Azure cloud course, or actually the exam and certification, first of all, let me know. I have all the material. Second thing is these .vhd virtual disk can be uploaded to the Azure cloud. .vhdx cannot be. So what are we talking about? So I'm just going to go for the same thing in Windows Server 2012, 2016, 2019 based Hyper-V. The virtual disk extension is .vhdx. Now this you must know because in future, whenever there are some troubleshooting going on, you should know that the virtual disk that gets created has an extension of .vhdx for the Windows Server 2012, 2016, 2019 based Hyper-V virtual machines. So yes, exactly. So here, the virtual disk extension is .vhdx, right? And so what we understand from here is that, okay, if generation 1 virtual machines, so generation 1 VMs can be created inside Windows 2012, why would you want to create a generation 1 machine that is basically for Windows Server 2008? We're on Windows 2012, but why would you want to create a virtual machine generation 1 that only supports Windows Server 2008 or the previous Hyper-V? Anyone knows why would you want to create that? A machine that actually is made for 2008, but you're creating in 2012. No reason, right? So the reason would be backward compatibility. So generation 1 VMs can be created in inside Windows 2012 R2 for backward compatibility. What does that mean? So if the Gen 1 VMs need to be migrated back to existing Windows 2008 based Hyper-V. So if they are Gen 1 machines on 2012, then only you can migrate them. If they are Gen 2 virtual machines on 2012, you cannot migrate them back to 2008. 2008 does not recognize generation 2 machines, so it's only backward compatibility because of which you're gonna create that. So when you join a company, you will see a lot of old applications and old hardware, right? So for that, you need to be really sharp about that whatever you're creating now might actually be used for older applications and hardware as well. So you have to be a sharp administrator there. And well, sometimes we just learn from our experiences. We're okay. So this is backward compatibility. That's what you need to understand. So if I go back to that page here, so Gen 1, we do not have to create that. We can go for Generation 2, which supports 64-bit applications and operating systems there. It supports secure boot, which is that your boot files are encrypted, and no hacker would be able to attack those boot files and put its malicious code there. SCSI boot as well. SCSI is just for you have multiple disks with the SCSI controller there. Suppose you have 10 disks, 20 disks there, and then Pixie boot. Anyone ever heard of Pixie before?
No, never. Absolutely not.
Okay. So Pixie is pre-boot execution environment. So just in brief, anyone? Pixie? No? No. Okay. Oh, for networking. Okay, good. Exactly. So let me just put that in perspective. So suppose you have one server here, and your company has just purchased 50 desktops, 50 Dell desktops, right? So what happens here is the boss says, hey, can you just install operating system and applications on 50 Dell desktops this weekend? Good luck. That's it. Boss goes away. That's what bosses do, right? So then you think that, how can I do that? So you would go for a solution called WDS in Microsoft, which is Windows Deployment Services, or any remote deployment option. So WDS will do what? You can just have one desktop here, install an OS there, install apps there, and then take an image of that whole thing, upload it to the WDS server, which is Windows Deployment Services, and from there deploy it to all 49 machines. That image, and that will be the working image. Normally this is called golden image, and that is a working image of a virtual machine. As soon as the image gets deployed, all 49 machines, when they restart, they're just working with that operating system and applications, right? So what is Pixie then? Pixie is whenever you purchase a machine, so the network card will, if your laptop boots from the network, it is Pixie compatible right now. Every laptop can boot from the network. What is the meaning of booting from the network? So you don't have a hard disk, you don't have an operating system there, it will start looking for a local DHCP in the network, and I just need to grab an IP while it is an empty machine, right? So that is called Pixie or pre-execution pre-boot execution. Sorry, Pixie is pre-boot execution environment. Okay, so anyway, this is mentioned in this obviously the virtualization environment. So when you really want to deploy all the virtual machines, then you need a network card that is Pixie compatible. That network card's job is, if there is no OS, it will search for a local DHCP and it will find a DHCP, get an IP. Then its job is, or DHCP will refer you to a server that deploys images over the network. So this card just looks for a DHCP when there's an empty machine there. So that is the functionality called Pixie or pre-boot execution environment. So the network card searches for DHCP and grab an IP. That's it. So the empty machine is on the network. That's the main purpose of Pixie. Why empty machine want to be on the network? To grab an image and get installed with all the applications and OS. So generation 2 supports the Pixie as well. So secure boot, SCSI boot, Pixie boot using a standard network adapter. Guest operating system must be running at least 2012 or 64-bit. So once you create a virtual machine and it is generation 2, you cannot change it back to generation 1. So that much said here. Okay, so we understand that generation 1 is for backward compatibility, so we're not going to go for that. Generation 2 are the machines with latest features and only 64-bit operating system and applications support. So let's click next here. Selecting generation 2, let's click next here, right? And then assign memory. So you as a virtualization admin would know that how much of the physical memory you have, and out of that how much you want to give to this virtual machine, right? And how many extra virtual machines in future you're going to be deploying. So that all calculation has to be in your mind, that what kind of memory. So right now I have suppose 8 GB RAM, or I have suppose 16 GB RAM. So I can just give this machine 44184, right? So that's a 4 GB 4 GB RAM given to that virtual machine. And so if you go for this RAM or any other RAM, make sure that you have given some breathing space for the host, which means that enough memory should be left for the host to actually keep on working. If you give all the RAM here, obviously the host will stop working, or it will be really slow after that. So we give this memory here, and 32 MB through 4188. It says already that this is the total that is available.
Mine says 7306.
Okay, that 60.
Holy crap. 13,190.
Okay.
Wow. 32
Did you give
32
24 GB to this machine?
No, 16.
16. Oh, then don't go for 4. So guys, anyone sees here 2000? Huh? Very good. Keep it like that. Yeah. Uh-oh. Is it about this? Then after the class session. Because if it's the previous class, then after. Alright guys? Huh? Hyper-V you need to install. So if it's where you're stuck here, then only. I'll be quick now, but for previous lab.
Jesus. 13,000.
Dude, I need a smooth break if I
And give so you're there actually. Your first and VMCreated. So guys, anyone sees 2000 written there? Where there's 4188? No one's saying 2000, right? If you see 2000, which means you've given less memory to the host, so in that case, stick to 512 in that case, because you need to have lesser than that, right? No, give. What do you get? 218.
So nobody.
the 75% of that, give half of that, right? Whatever you see there, give half of that. Okay, I'm seeing actually 4188, so in fact, I'm just gonna go half of that, obviously. So 2184, I'll just go over 2184, right? So whatever is there, just give half of that. So you're seeing actually 850 MB only. So this means you've not given your host even 4 GB. Maybe 2 GB you've given to your host. Host is server, that virtual machine that you're working on, right? So if it is very less RAM, that's not good. Later, at the end of the class, shut down and give it 4 GB. How much is the total RAM? 8 GB? So how much is the total RAM in your laptop? So give your host 4 GB. Right guys, so anyway, if you have put in that information, then there is that dynamic memory here. So dynamic memory is when you decide how much memory to assign to a virtual machine. Consider how you intend to use the virtual machine and the operating system that it will run. So the thing is that if you click that dynamic memory, the hypervisor will intelligently try to grab much more memory. If this machine during peak hours require more than 2 GB memory, suppose, so the dynamic memory option will arrange that memory from the total physical memory here. So I'm just going to type that here, that during creation dynamic memory. So if the VM needs more than the assigned memory, then if the dynamic memory option is selected, then the host is responsible to provide any further available memory from the total physical memory, right? Total physical memory. So dynamic memory just means that if you need more memory, the host tells the virtual machine, oh, virtual machine, you need more memory? Okay, so I have 16 GB available. From that, you already took 4 GB memory. Now you need more? Okay, I have 2 GB more available. From that, I can assign you automatically 1 GB more or 500 MB more. And then when this machine has used up that memory, operating system or the hypervisor will take it back. Hypervisor will take it back as well, right? So the thing is that dynamic memory is automatic assignment of memory there. So I'll do a spell check now. Available memory. Okay, so in other words, in English now, it means that the host will provide needed memory and will take back when not needed. That is also called ballooning. That's an actual term in VMware. So it's just intelligently provided. If you uncheck this option, what will happen? So when this operating system or virtual machine reaches 2184, suppose in my case, and I've unchecked that, obviously any more further memory will not be provided. So if the end users are connected and the virtual machine is performing slow, that's it. There is no other choice. But if you click, so for critical machines, you will go for dynamic memory. For non-critical machines, don't go for that. You're there? Where to go, man? Cool. Alright guys, so if you have clicked that option, that's your screenshot number 3. So that's dynamic memory selected. The name is dynamic memory selected. So take a screenshot number 3 here, right? And the name is dynamic memory selected. So, right? So screenshot number 3. Okay, so dynamic memory selected, screenshot number 3. So let's get going. Oh, okay. Now if we've all taken this screenshot. Let's go ahead. And if we understand, the main thing is, do we understand what we're doing? Otherwise, next finish is the easiest thing to do, right? I can just have a written lab here as well, and you do it, you're happy, I'm happy. But if you don't get what we did, so after the college, you'll be like wondering, oh, okay. So next thing is, try to understand what's going on, right? It's good for your career. So here, if you're on the next page here, we can see configure networking, and obviously we had connected. If you drop down, you can see an external virtual switch got created here. Whenever a hypervisor is installed, obviously it has to create one virtual switch that connects the virtual machines to the outside network and to each other as well, right? So this is that virtual switch, and this virtual switch is actually connected to what? Maybe some of us remember we connected this virtual switch to something during the yes, exactly. So as you said, if we go to this, so it's Ethernet 0 physical NIC, as you said. Exactly, this external switch is connected to Ethernet 0 here, right? So, and the best practice is have a NIC team there to be connected to the external switch, not just one network card, right? So let's go back here. Now this external switch is pretty much ready to have outside traffic provided to that virtual machine that we're creating. This is the virtual machine wizard, right? And we provided it the virtual switch that is connected to the Ethernet 0 right now. So let's click next. And you can see that because this is not a 2008 based hypervisor, it is at 20. Yes, sir. Yeah, see this? I'll just click previous. I selected this. There's only one there. We all selected that, right? Okay. We're good, right? So let's click next. So we get that, okay, there will be a virtual disk created, and that virtual disk has the exact same name as the virtual machine name here. So you can change that too, but we don't really have to, and this is the path. The other thing is dynamically expanding. There was another name for that, dynamically expanding, if anyone remembers that. What was the other name for dynamically expanding? Yeah, somebody said that, yeah. Thin provision, right? Exactly. So thin provision is and dynamic expand, same thing, but then the full space is not occupied in the, so it is saying I'm going to give 127 GB to this virtual disk. We don't have that kind of free space in our laptops, right? So that's why it clearly says here this is dynamically expanding. Don't worry, it's not going to take anything if you don't install anything inside the virtual machine. It's going to be a 4 KB virtual machine if you don't install anything. We don't have any operating system inside, right? So operating system space will be taken on the disk if operating system is installed. Otherwise, it's just very, very small space. But it will expand to this space. And you can see that it's a VHDX first of all. And second thing, that's extension of the virtual disk. Second thing is it goes up to 64 terabyte maximum. So if the quiz asks that, okay, the virtual machine, when you create a virtual machine with the VHDX option or the generation 2, the maximum size it can go up to is 32 terabyte. So obviously that's false. It can go up to 64 terabyte. So my suggestion is when there's a quiz, you can have this Hyper-V open in front of you. It's going to be open book. It's just that you cannot backtrack, and there will be less time to decide. So whatever you know now would really help. Otherwise, you will have an option to just Google it and have the correct answer. Okay, so excuse me. Here, 64 terabyte, it goes up to, it's dynamically expanding, and use an existing virtual disk. You can do that too if you've created one virtual disk separately, and you can attach a virtual disk later, which means no disk. So we're gonna have to have some disk here. So this is selected. Let's, well, that's your screenshot number 4, that virtual disk VHDX created. Just go for VHDX created. Now, you should know what that means. It's just a virtual disk extension. VHDX actually means virtual hard disk, right? So the screenshot name for this screen is VHDX created. So you get familiar with this term for the cloud related labs, or when you do handle outside in contracts, Azure and AWS cloud, which you will have to. Every company has that now. So you will be facing this VHDX or VHD kind of scenarios there, that what to upload to the cloud and what not to upload, right? So VHDX created, I'm just, if you're taking that screenshot, I'm just going to add that to screenshot here as well. I'm trying to find out if this college is VMware IT Academy. If that's the case, I'll try to get you those, VCP 75% discount. So, vouchers. I hope I could do that, but I'm just in contact with some people here. Obviously, no one has any idea about those vouchers right now. So, screenshot 4 is VHDX created. Okay, so if we go ahead here, we're talking about the VHDX. Okay, that's the 2012 based virtual machines virtual disk extension, and VHD is the 2008 based virtual disk extension. So we understand that, and let's click next here. Now it says operating system or no operating system. Okay, there's a problem. We could barely install the actual virtual machine itself. I mean, the host itself. If we start installing operating system inside a virtual machine, which is inside VMware Workstation, which is inside or on top of our Windows 10. So that's called nested virtualization, right? Virtualization inside virtualization. So installing an operating system might not be a very good idea now, but what we would be able to learn for the virtualization, whether operating system is there or not, the steps are same to implement any features inside. One thing to know about that, if you have an operating system, you must install VMware tools, or actually it's not VMware tools, it's Hyper-V tools there. So you have to install those for advanced features to take place there. So right now we can ignore that, but later I'll at least show you that those who want to install and check that at home as well and play with it for job purposes as well. So I'll just show you how to do that later. It's gonna be, you just have to copy ISO inside this host. Which host? The host that we're working on. And then suppose in the downloads folder of that host you copy the ISO. Then when you browse, it's just going to go to the downloads folder of this host, and you can just drag it from there. Anyway, so install an operating system later. Install an operating system from a bootable image file, or install an operating system from a network-based installation. You can do that too. So if you have a Pixie-based network, which is pre-boot execution environment, right? So, and it is WDS from Microsoft. There are many other network deployment solutions like SCCM, System Center Configuration Manager. So if you have that, this machine can have operating system flying from over the network in and installed on this machine as well. If anyone needs access, I teach NCSA as well, so we do that lab of WDS. We deploy image over the network to empty machines. If you want that video, you can just email me. Hey, can you just give me that access to video where you have configured WDS, if you want to go that far. Okay, but it only increases your knowledge about how to deploy over the network. So install an operating system later is selected, and click next. And there's your summary here. Do not click the finish button, because that's very, very tempting to click that finish or close or install button, but do not click that finish button, right? So that's your screenshot number 5, I guess, and that is virtual machine summary or VM summary. So screenshot number 5, VM summary. Screenshot number 5, VM summary. So I'll just put that here. VM summary. I hope everyone got the screenshot there. And okay, so let's keep going. I hope nobody gets an error now. Okay, since we're all, it's live, so let's click finito. No matter, right? Please no error, please no error. It's a good time to panic now. Oh, it's done, right? Good? Good? Okay. So So virtual machine got created and no error. Otherwise, you could have. So whenever you see an error, screenshot it, please, and just email me with an explanation that okay, this came. That's why I could not. If you are unable to upload that day the lab, please have some screenshots and explanation there. Don't worry about then. I understand errors can come, and it's not that easy to really keep that environment up and running. So at the end of the class, I would just recommend, if you can do that, you can just copy this one virtual machine into your external drive as well, or just upload it to OneDrive or Google Drive if you have a big one. Zip it and upload it, or just keep it, because throughout the course we're using this virtual machine, right? And plus more virtual machines will be coming. Okay, guys, so virtual machine got created here. We understand that there are many things inside. We discussed generation 1, generation 2, and then the network card, and dynamically expanding, and then dynamic memory as well. So many of the things that are required to create a virtual machine. Now, if you right-click that virtual machine here, so you can see that there's a checkpoint here. Anyone knows what's a checkpoint? It's
Like a snapshot?
exactly. It's like a snapshot, as you said. So you want to go back. Suppose you took a checkpoint today, which is very good idea. Let's take a checkpoint here. If we mess up, if there's continuous errors coming, then you can go back to the checkpoint where it was working fine, right? So now, guys, one more thing here. There's checkpoint in Hyper-V is called, as you have mentioned, it is called snapshot here, right? So if this is VMware, the rival hypervisor. Inside the rival hypervisor, we have Hyper-V, right? So for VMware, if I right click on top, they have a snapshot option here. That does exactly the same thing. Now, if your virtual machines are working fine, you're exactly on this page. At the end of each lab, each class, we must take a snapshot. Snapshot takes very little space, but it saves the configuration of today's whatever we did today. It just saves it. So you want to go back to that configuration where it was working fine, you can go back to that snapshot, right? So that's really important, that if your virtual machine is working fine, wow, that's the time to take a snapshot as well. But right now I'm going to show you how to take that too. Actually, it's just click. But right now we're here, and let's click that. If you right click the virtual machine, let's click that checkpoint here. And once you click that checkpoint, it creates one with a date, a timestamp here. So screenshot number 6 is checkpoint for the VM created, or checkpoint created. That's it. Screenshot number 6 is checkpoint created. Screenshot number 6, checkpoint created. So it's Wonderland there, right? Okay, so checkpoint created, right? Now here, if you have taken the screenshot with the timestamp, I'm just gonna quickly label that. Checkpoint created, and checkpoint created. Since we are creating checkpoint, why don't we just create a snapshot as well, because that's more critical for the host, right? So that's also our understanding that the two rival hypervisors, how do they offer the safety of a machine. So how about we go to the host on the top here. I hope everyone's seeing that. And then right click on top of that, and go for this snapshot. Once you click take snapshot, this is very crucial, and if your machine has no errors and you're exactly on the same page, this is the correct time to do that. Let's click take snapshot for the VMware workstation as well. And once you click the take snapshot, it takes snapshot number 1 of that. Do not click take snapshot now. If you did click that, you can just come back there and saying so. So what we need to put here is, whenever, suppose we mess up in 5th week or 6th week, we create something and it's really not going anywhere, it's giving you error. So when you come back to the snapshot, you need to know what did you do already. You need to be knowledgeable about the configuration of that snapshot. So we have to put that DHCP and DNS installed, Hyper-V installed, one VM created. So when you come back to that snapshot one, you will know that this much you don't need to know. You don't need to do actually, right? So and after this, well, one more thing is renamed and static IP given. So you don't have to do that too. So this machine is, if you ever had to go back to snapshot one, and whenever you do want to go back, please do ask me first that I want to go back to snapshot one. Well, if you do want to go back, it's not going to be a big problem. Okay, so DHCP and DNS installed, Hyper-V installed, one VM created, renamed, and static IP given, right? Yeah.
For instance, we took this concept this week, and like if we are in 7th week, can we come back and go back to the?
Oh, can we go back to 7 as well? That's a very good question. So guys, the question is that if we come back to this, but then we want to go back to that configuration of 7th week. Suppose we want to go from 7th week to this one. So first you take the screenshot of that 7th week and then come back to this. So then you can go back to that snapshot as well, right? So that's just a snapshot that you can. So if you want to come back to any snapshot, you can just take that as well. So let's click that take snapshot here. No, that's snapshot one is okay. Snapshot one is okay, right? So take snapshot and okay. So that is your screenshot number 6 already. Yeah, checkpoint created. Okay, so we can just go ahead and if we right click on the virtual machine here again, so we have settings, start, checkpoint, revert, move, export, so and enable replication. If you want this machine's partner to be on the other host, right, then you can just go for replication as well. One thing about that is, let's right click on the virtual machine and go to settings. Let's right click the virtual machine and go to settings here. Once you go to the settings, you can see that you can add extra virtual disks here. Yeah. Oh, okay. You couldn't save it? Do you have enough space on the laptop?
Yeah, mine's frozen too.
The snapshot. Oh, sorry.
Well, it's done, but I can't click back onto my
VM. So maybe it is still taking the. So snapshot, guys. Snapshot takes time to be saved. Yeah, it's going to take time to save. But if it is saving state, it's going to take time.
Oh, yours is too.
So mine is 38%, guys. This.
Did you not do anything while doing that, or?
Actually, when it's taking snapshot, we can do anything we want. Just don't take a snapshot on top of a snapshot. That's the only thing we can avoid. Other than that, if the snapshot is being taken, we can still configure anything else if it allows us to. Okay. Guys, anyone else? The machine is frozen? No, right?
Oh, wait.
Maybe it's just slow.
Yeah, I think it's just slow. I think I'm good.
Good, all right? Okay.
13%.
Yeah, because it takes time, but on top of this, we cannot just create another snapshot. That's the only thing we need to be worrying about, right? So when we're going to, so are we able to right click here? So, and we're right clicking the settings, right? I hope everyone's there. Cool.
Let's try it. There it is.
Oh, okay.
Settings.
Okay. So that's the virtual machine setting. Suppose in production environments, normally you will have 40 or 50 virtual machines here. So each virtual machine will have its virtual hardware. So virtual memory, virtual CPU, virtual firmware. So first of all, you want to add some hardware to the virtual machine. You can do that. Obviously, it's not hot pluggable. So you would see if you will be able to change the hardware if the machine state is off, right? If it is on, then obviously if the end users are connected to that, you cannot just shut down and change the hardware during the production hours, during the peak time. So you have to wait for the users to disconnect and then shut down the machine, ask for a downtime, send that email, get the approval, and then change the virtual hardware of a virtual machine. So what we can do is, you can see here quickly, first of all, there's a firmware, and firmware has enabled secure boot option there. There is boot order. You can just change the boot order as well, which maybe you know already that you can do that for your desktops and servers as well. You can just change the boot order anytime you want. So network adapter, it normally checks the network adapter. Hey, network adapter, is there a Pixie boot you need, or do you want me to connect to the local DHCP? But then it checks that, oh, there's a hard disk and there's a boot files there. Okay, let me just boot from those hard disks. So guys, if you're all on firmware here, let's click the hard drive and click move up, right? So hard drive boot order has been moved up, right? So take a screenshot number 7 that boot order changed for VM. So boot order, so take a screenshot number 7, boot order changed for VM. So in firmware, it's not very advanced firmware, but when you see the firmware of a virtual machine in VMware, that's amazing. Lots of options there, just like any BIOS or UEFI of a desktop or a server, physical desktop or server. Boot order changed for VM, or boot order changed. That's all. Boot order changed, but that comes from the firmware, and yeah. So take a screenshot number 7 and boot order changed. Okay, I hear that. So, okay guys, go ahead and upload. Oh, you want to go ahead, because how much time does it take to 3:47? You got 13 minutes left, right? We can use it up, right? Absolutely. It's Friday. We should use it, right? Right? To week 2 in 07. So go ahead, guys. Okay, guys. So we can suspend the machine. We've taken a snapshot already, right? And in next class we have to go for second one. That's gonna be a lot of memory juggling. So guys, here on this virtual machine you can see right click and power, and better go for this suspend guest, right? Yep. Oh, problem? Suspend guest, and the document needs to be uploaded. I think there's an upload link. Are you able to upload to the 07? No, this is just the virtual machine, because that is for the host. Yeah, it's okay. For now, it's okay. Yeah, that's good. Labels. Hey guys, are you able to upload? Anyone not able to upload, let me know. No, it's okay. Like we have suspend, maybe your space is good for the C drive or E drive, wherever you are. Oh.
Good job, guys.
It needs more space. Machine is running on
Able to install these.
So, and it has very less space. It needs more space to suspend to shut down.
2 hours. 2 hours.
Oh yeah, you did that. Because it's Friday.
Are all going to be uploaded to here?
Yeah.
It's week 2 Friday, right?
And it says Friday lab, and this is your
Friday, it's Friday.
So anyone not able to upload? You're good.
Still working on it.
Oh.
You got this, Jeremy.
So this
Oh, yeah. That's the whole process.
Oh, I'll get it tomorrow.
You need to upload it.
Yeah, you know what?
Make a playlist of YouTube.
Okay, so
Okay, guys. So I'm gonna suspend that.
Which one do we upload to? 5 or 7?
7. So guys, 7 is on Fridays. 5 is on Mondays, right? Now they create two of those links for the two lecture and lab. So Monday 05, Friday 07, right?
Jackson.
So
Is there something on the 05 to submit what we did on Monday?
Mine.
well, you emailed me that. So
It's an email.
yeah,
There's my both my documents
yeah.
are in.
So it was before today. It was all emails. From today, we're uploading, right? Cool. Cool. So guys, if you're missing anything, then the videos are there in the Google group. If you didn't get it, you can just email me. Yep, sure. I'll be sending that. Those students who have issues with the laptop, please, you can just meet me after the class now. Outside somewhere, we can just try to fix that one by one. Sorry? Oops. Wow. I'm just editing things. Yeah. So guys, no more emails for the submission. You can upload only, right? But any other questions, please do email me. But not the submission. Thank you. Thank you. And I'll be doing that now. Oh, okay. That's better. So bad? Okay. Got it. Got it. Thank you, sir.
I'm still kind of cloudy with this whole
Mhm.
time thing. So there's cloud has 8 screenshots.
That's the
very first one we
first
did.
lab. So
Last
week
Friday.
1, Friday.
So that's going to go in the first Dropbox on 07. Now what you guys did on Monday with the 3 screenshots that you sent everything, do you want me to email that to you?
That is email.
Okay, there's no Dropbox for that one. That's why I was confused. There's only 2 Dropboxes, but we've done 3 times.
Yeah.
So what we did today, these 7 screenshots go into the second Dropbox.
Exactly.
Perfect. Okay, I'll send you an email tonight with those 3 screenshots from the second from Monday this week.
Mm-hmm.
And if you could send me an email.
Yeah, I
with the
need
video.
to do that now, so I'll just
Josh.
quickly. Oh, it's a Google group. I'll just quickly do that.
I did. I filled out the form and everything too, so you should have my Gmail.
And it's I just don't want to forget that. So yeah, video playlist. So I'll just forward it to you. Post reply and forward quickly. Yeah. So your email Gmail is
Josh.
JOSH
dot current. CURRAN.
at Gmail.
23 at gmail.
23.
Yep.
At
Gmail.
Got it. I hope you
Awesome.
got it now.
Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
With the Hyper-V issue.
All right. That's solid.
We sent you the email too.
Oh, okay, yeah, the screenshots and everything. So you were not able to upload today. Okay, we're good. So let's. Where is it? Oh, let me just stop that.